Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to break down something that happens behind the scenes in big systems, like the justice system. We're talking about how one single story about a person can get locked in, becoming this unshakable official truth, creating a kind of machine that just refuses to be corrected.
So let's just dive right in with the big question, because this really hits home for a lot of people. How does one person's story, maybe even a mistaken first impression, become the only story that a powerful system is willing to hear? It's not just about one error. It's about how that error gets copied, pasted, and basically cemented into a reality that becomes almost impossible to challenge.
All right, so first things first, we've got to understand the core problem. How does a narrative lock in so tightly that new facts, new evidence, heck, even common sense, just seem to bounce right off it?
Okay, now take a look at this. This timeline shows exactly how it happens. It's a classic example. On day one, you have a police call. An officer at a pretty chaotic scene writes down, "Alex emotional." Totally subjective, right? A week later, that note turns into concerns re Alex's emotional regulation in a CPS report. Fast forward to day 30, and a court official concludes Alex is dysregulated. And then look at day 90. It's morphed into a formal history of instability in a criminal charge. Notice how no new evidence was added. It's just the same initial observation getting more serious with each step.
And this brings us to a really crucial concept: narrative lock-in. This is the moment when the system's label for you, words like high conflict or non-compliant, becomes more powerful than any actual evidence. Once that label sticks, everything you do gets filtered through it. So if you're labeled high conflict and you try to correct an error in a report, well, that's just seen as you being, you guessed it, high conflict. It's a perfect trap.
So, how does this machine actually get built? Let's pop the hood and look at the three core gears that make it run. And it's really important to get this. We're not necessarily talking about conspiracies here. These are more like cultural habits and procedures that just end up having this massive, powerful effect.
The first gear is collusion. Now, hold on. When we say collusion, we're not talking about some criminal backroom deal. Think of it as an informal alignment. It's the heads-up email between colleagues, the quick phone call to get on the same page, or even just copy-pasting a conclusion from an earlier report because it's faster. It's professionals acting like an unofficial team, all telling the same story to keep cases moving. Gear number 2 is good old-fashioned groupthink. In these high-pressure systems with insane caseloads, there is a huge pressure to just agree with your colleagues. Pretty soon, keeping the group united feels way more important than actually getting the facts right. And if you're the person who speaks up and challenges the consensus, you risk getting labeled as emotional, difficult, or, not a team player. And the third gear, closing ranks. Wow, this one might be the most powerful of all. This is the system's deep, self-protective instinct. When you challenge a professional or file a complaint, the institution's immune system kicks in. It reflexively defends its own. And your very act of challenging the story they've created, that just gets reframed as more proof that the negative story about you was right from the start. So what fuels all these gears? It's just basic human psychology. You've got anchoring, that first impression becomes the permanent reference point. Then confirmation bias kicks in, so everyone starts looking for evidence that proves that first impression was right. And you can't forget things like sunk cost. After months or even years on a case, too many people have invested too much time and reputation to admit, hey, maybe we got this wrong from the beginning.
So you have this one little idea, maybe a flawed one. How on earth does it spread so effectively from one agency to another? Well, it travels through the system's incredibly connected pathways, and it picks up more and more credibility with every single jump.
I mean, just look at this pathway. It's fascinating and honestly a little scary. It starts with a police officer's note, emotionally unstable. Then a CPS worker sees that note and writes it down as a concern. Then a guardian ad litem reads that report and calls it documented concerns. And finally, a judge sees the GAL report and makes it official in a court order as a history of instability. Do you see what's happening? This isn't 4 separate people independently reaching the same conclusion. It's one unverified opinion basically photocopied 4 times. Okay, so if you're up against this machine, what can you possibly do? Well, the first step, and this is absolutely key, is not to get emotional or start making big accusations. It's to diagnose the pattern with total precision. This isn't about how you feel. It's about mapping the actual facts. And this right here is an incredibly practical tool for doing exactly that. It's called the Claims Evidence Matrix. It's simple, but it's powerful. In the first column, you write down the claim they're making about you, like non-compliant. Next, you track down who said it and what evidence they actually cited, which a lot of the time is nothing at all. And finally, you list your own concrete, documented evidence that proves them wrong. This methodically pulls apart opinion from fact, and it shows you exactly where their story is built on sand.
Here's another fantastic tool, the label inventory. You just make a list of every single one of those vague, psychological-sounding labels they used to describe you. Alienating, lacks insight, stuff like that. Then you play detective. Where did this word first show up? And more importantly, was it ever actually defined with specific factual examples? You'll often find these labels are just floating around with absolutely no factual anchor.
All right, so you've done your homework, you've diagnosed the pattern. Now comes the really strategic part. You have to communicate in a way that doesn't just add more fuel to the fire. You've got to change your language to change the whole game.
This slide, this comparison is everything. On the left side, you've got machine fuel. This is what feels so natural to say when you're frustrated, right? You're all corrupt. This is a witch hunt. But the machine just eats that up. It easily dismisses it as more proof that you're unstable. But look at the right side. That is the language that is much, much harder for the system to ignore. It's calm, it's factual, it's focused on process and accuracy. You're not attacking people, you're just pointing out errors in their paperwork.
And here are some specific phrases you can literally use. Using language like, to ensure accuracy, or my goal is not to attack any individual. It signals that you are a rational person focused on procedure. You are speaking the system's own language of fairness and due process back to it, and that makes your concerns way more credible.
And really, that's what it all comes down to. Understanding this machine isn't about trying to fight some vague conspiracy. It's about recognizing that the system is just not built to easily admit it made a mistake. So your best, and maybe your only protection, is precision. Precise documentation, precise language, and a relentless focus on the facts. That is how you demand and insist on fairness.